and Sheryl Aikman. They're going to do their more in-depth introductions, but today we're going to hear about implementing a successful planned giving program and or reviving your current planned giving program. So I know that you want to welcome Lloyd and Sheryl. Lloyd was the speaker, Sheryl's the dancing girl, but I'm not sure about that.
No, Vanna never loses.
Now, who needs a handout? Everybody have them? Perfect.
And
Run tables.
Okay.
we will also have some handouts on the 7 easy steps to implementing a request program for your organization, but I know if I give it to you, you'll read it and leave. So we will have those available as soon as this is over. You know, people have said to me, you know, this is just a lot of work to do planned giving. It's you got to do a lot of things. You got to, but you know, the main thing you got to do is build relationships in any type of fundraising enterprise. And how many of you have a planned giving program that you feel is really top notch? I don't. Well, that's the Community Foundation. God, and you just got here. That's great.
It's all because of me.
That's great. Anyway, I'm enthusiastic about planned giving because I think it's something that everybody can do, but you have to do it consistently. And it's not one of those things you say, okay, I'm going to put out a newsletter, and all of a sudden I've got a planned giving program. Or I'm going to have a seminar. Seminars are really, you know, they're great, but if you just do a seminar and you leave, then you haven't really accomplished very much. It's a process. The process of planned giving is what really brings success to your program or to the program you're trying to revive. Most of you know these figures, that about 50% of the people over 45 or 50 years old have a will. You knew that, right? 50%. Somewhere in that neighborhood. Of those 50%, only about 10 to 12% remember charity in their will. Now, the thing that you probably know instinctively is that of the about 80% of those people who didn't leave a charity in their estate plan, and you realize this, you got 50%, then you got only about 10, 11% that remember charity. Of the ones that didn't leave charity in their estate plan, why did 80%, what did they say was the reason?
They were not asked.
They were not asked, either by the development person or by their advisor. And we're going to get to some myths of planned giving in just a few minutes after Sheryl really introduces you to why you need to get into planned giving, and in a serious way. You know, you can't pay lip service to something like this, and yet it can't occupy all your time because you got annual fund, you got the capital campaign coming up, you got board development coming up, and board development is very important in looking at planned gifts. But it's not like you say, all right, we expect everybody to give us a planned gift. It ain't going to happen. You got to build relationships. And how do you build those relationships? You build them in the same way for planned gifts that you would for your capital campaign, for your annual support, or even for anything, foundation giving even. Because what you're trying to do is anybody ever read James Gregory Lloyd's Philanthropy and Marketing? Is that book familiar to anybody? Lists ways that you get to ownership. And ownership is what you're really after when you're talking about planned giving. Now, there'll be people coming out of the woodwork, and you know, the one thing you don't want to be susceptible to is saying, well, we got a will last year, therefore we got a planned gift program. What you want to do is say, we are building a planned gift program. We're taking those people who have a predisposition to give. They have a predisposition to give. They're giving to you. Or maybe they're not. but they like you and they like your organization. You have participation. If you've got the predisposition and you've got them participating in some way, whether they're giving you $10 or $100 or $1,000, and they're giving you on a frequency basis, that's a good sign. But you go from that participation to involvement. And you think of this, you all know the pyramid, the giving pyramid. Well, this is the same type of pyramid. It brings people up toward ownership. And you get participation, you get involvement, you put them on a committee. You share with them something extra that you're doing, some great program you've got going. And you've got to be enthusiastic about this. It isn't going to work, folks. From participation to involvement to commitment. And the commitment is when they say, yeah, we want to help you with that capital campaign. We want to help you with developing what you've got going within your organization. So you're selling the organization, and you've got to be thrilled about that. And you go from that commitment to ownership. And the ownership is something that's in their mind. It's not something you're going to say, you want shares of our organization? No. It's got to be in their psyche. They've got to feel good about what you're doing and the service you provide to the community. And that's what you build on when you are building a relationship that leads to a planned gift. And I'm going to talk about some other things about planned gift development and how you move forward. But Sheryl's going to talk to you about why you really need to be doing this.
You need to do this because it's your organization's future. You need to do it because your donors want to be able to provide for the future of the organization they care about. And that's the end of the donor-centric part of the speech. The other reasons you need to do it are because every dollar that you build in a pipeline that comes without having to work for it every year is a dollar you don't have to work for every year. Every dollar that's built into a bequest or a beneficiary designation, and particularly when you can use those dollars to build an endowment stream, is a donor you don't have to replace when they die. For loyal donors who've given consistently over time, providing them a way to keep giving that gift, be it modest or be it not so modest, is a win on both sides of the equation. Let me be clear around expectations. You are not getting this afternoon charitable main trust, charitable gift needs, charitable lead trust, irrevocable, non-grantor, set to fail lead trust. You're not getting any of that. Beneficiary designations, which are the ways that people can convey assets outside, that pass outside of their will, and bequests. That's all we're going to talk about. It's all you have to think about because that's 90% of the legacy money that comes to organizations. It's 90%. If you just do that, you're not leaving money on the table. If you know how to get help for donors who are interested in one of those more complicated vehicles, you're set. And for all of you in the room, that help is at the other end of the phone or the other end of an email to me or to Becky Davis, to Marcia. Maybe not like in week 4, you know, maybe give her to like week 7, right? So really, bequests, beneficiary designations, and that's what we're going to dive a little deeper on. 90% of legacy gifts fall in those two categories. We've seen at the Community Foundation, and the statistics I can parse generally, there's been a decrease in the other kinds of planned gifts. We can all imagine why that might be. The market tanked. Health insurance in the United States is a very uncertain landscape, no matter what your age. People who are already using their retirement savings to live on are not seeing the kind of recovery that some of the rest of us who aren't touching that money and just let it sit and grow back while it's still in the market are. Many of those kinds of gifts, the charitable remainder trusts in particular, but also charitable gift annuities, are not very effective in low interest rate environments, and we've been there for 8 years. You know, and until Ben Bernanke changes his mind, we're there. And many of those gifts require pretty significant personal resources expended to make them happen. You have to pay a lawyer. You have to have the property appraised. You have to have an environmental assessment. And people are less inclined to spend money to make a gift than they were at another time. But the really important answer to that big question why on the handout is because it's the future for your organization. What do you need? What's the ready? You need to feel enthusiastic and positive about being able to offer this opportunity, and your board needs to feel the same. Having some donors is good, somewhere to start from. An annual base of people. Even better is if you have a track record of donors who've given to you over time. You know, some of the conventional wisdom says, oh, you have to have been in existence for 10 years and you have to have donor records going back to the beginning of time and all that. I'm not sure that's the case, but you have to be able to at least look and see how long has this donor given? Sort of a minimum. You've got to be doing good work and be able to explain your good work. Because you're convincing someone to make a commitment for that good work in a future that neither of you can picture exactly. So the better story you have to tell about the work you're doing now, the vision you have for the future, the way the need is going to change or not change, and the way the organization is going to respond, the elements of the story. I mentioned the board. If you don't have a story that compels at least some of your board to be willing to make this kind of commitment, you need to go back and try the story again. So a supportive board in that way. And you got to have a little time to do this. You don't need to have a whole separate staff person. We're going to talk lots about all the things you don't need to have. But you have to be willing to put this on your plate in a consistent way, what Lloyd said, and to attend to it in a consistent way. The get set is largely a thinking exercise. It's a thinking exercise you can do alone, but I would suggest it's a thinking exercise that's much more effective with your board or with a committee of your board who's interested in having this happen at the organization. And some of the questions for that thinking exercise are, what if you get a big gift? Do you have a plan? I will tell you, I sit on the board of an organization that got a 6-figure gift last week and doesn't have a plan. There's a very interesting board level conversation going on about stuff the board, at a level where the board really shouldn't be. So, and some of you have heard, I'm looking at Tammy Ruckman because she's heard this part of the speech before, doing the mental exercise. Again, maybe with your whole board if it's small, maybe with a committee of what happens if we get $10,000? If we get $100,000, if we got $1 million, what would we do? Do we have an endowment? Would we want to create an endowment? Would we allocate that gift between our current year's budget and some future uses? You know, letting people do that in a blue sky kind of way without the pressure of a check that needs to be deposited creates better dialogue and less stress. Do you know anybody who's already made a commitment to your organization?
Yes.
Okay, good. Have you talked to them lately about it?
Yes.
Good. Do you have a way to keep track of that? Hopefully. Do you have a group of people who haven't made a commitment, but that you could gather around a table? I'm looking at Marcia, because we're talking about this at the Community Foundation, and I could look at Angela too, who's helping us with this. And ask them about if we called it this, if we ask you in this way, if we gave you this sheet explaining what we're doing, would you understand where we're going? So it's a focus group, it's Gail Perry's famous advice visit, and it's cultivation, and it's just one afternoon. Accomplishes a lot of goals. Maybe plant some seeds that you can come back later. Do you have a gift acceptance policy? Kind of goes back to that, what do you do if you get the big check? What do you do when the executor calls and says, so, you have this house? You can turn down anything, but you need to have that conversation before you have to turn it down, before the clock is ticking on receiving an asset that could be either not helpful or detrimental to your organization and to your ability to control your schedule for the immediate future. And how are you going to recognize and thank and continue to engage people? That's the fun part, really. You know, are you going to like put awesome tiles on your wall again, Tammy Ruckman? Or the Community Foundation, which, with absolutely no apologies, hired the same artist that did the beautiful tiles at the YWCA to do some beautiful tiles for us in our new building. I mean, is it going to be a visual thing? Is it going to be a society? Is it going to be a dinner every year? Thinking about those sorts of things. That's the get set. The go is not being paralyzed by planning. You don't have to start with a list of 100 people. You don't have to start with every donor. 5 is plenty. 10, ambitious. 20, I would argue too many. Practice. Eat the elephant one bite at a time. Start with your board. Ask them. Name us in your will or by beneficiary designation. Get one or more of them to commit. And then it can be celebrated. And then you have something to take with your ask to people who are in the next ring out. Know that for people to do this, they need a succinct source of some important information. Your correct legal name. By correct legal name, I don't mean the one that's on your beautiful website. I mean the one that's sitting in the North Carolina Secretary of State's office on your documents. They are different, I will almost guarantee you. It's very easy to look yourself up on the Secretary of State's corporate website and find out what your correct legal name is. And if you're doing business as another name, did you file the paperwork with the Secretary of State to do that? The reason that's important is because if you're named in a document and the person doesn't update that document and you're doing business under a different name and the executor isn't sure if that's you or not, could cause a problem. Having your employer identification number, your EIN, your corporate social security number handy is also a good way to do that. We often when we create legacy documents for donors at the Community Foundation that name other charities that are going to benefit from a fund held at the Community Foundation, I put the EIN in the list of those organizations because that is unlikely to change. The name of the organization might, the location of its primary office might, all those things, but that EIN is likely to continue. And that's a way we could say, see, we really did mean the Black Mountain Home, not the Presbyterian Home for Children.
You filed paperwork when we made the change.
Yeah. So if you need help with your paperwork, your colleague can help you. If you want, you can have a lawyer suggest what a bequest looks like with your organization's name in it. But lawyers know how to write that language. And really, if they know your organization and can put your EIN number, that's sufficient. So you're going to look at your data. You're going to look at some people who've given over time. One strategy is to add up what they've given you. It might be surprising to you and to them. You might want to use that information when you go to thank them for their loyal support. Visit them, talk to them. This is why we're starting with 5, 10. We're not, we're not talking about thousands or hundreds. It's individual connections. Where did Lloyd start? He started with relationship. So solidifying and creating and recreating the relationship. Pay attention when one part of the partnership, one member of the partnership, if it's a couple to start with, passes away, because you've got to recreate the relationship. You may have to recreate it because you were primarily attached to the former board member who was one part of that couple. But you'll have to recreate it no matter, because that person who's been left is a different person than they were before. And priorities get reordered. And relationships get restacked. It's a moment where there's an opening to say lots of things about the place of your organization, and to learn lots of things about the place of your organization in the life of that person. So I went to Davidson College, and I was in an early class of women to be included in the life of Davidson College. So there are many, many living alumni of Davidson still who, there were not women on campus, they did not meet their wives on campus, their wives only were on campus as guests and visitors and to come back to reunions over time. The college's efforts to continue relationships with those women are very, very important in Davidson's fundraising success. And there are beautiful stories of the discovery of how much Davidson meant to those women, even though they aren't alumni, because of what it meant to their spouse. And because of the way the spouse's Davidson experience was woven through their whole life. So don't assume that because it was 1 degree of separation that your organization doesn't have a very special place in that person's memories, in their heart. I think there are moments, there are sort of thresholds in our relationships with donors where if you either ignore the importance of the threshold and kind of charge right through without acknowledging that you're exiting something and entering something else, or if you kind of peek in the door and go, oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to go in there with them, you miss an opportunity. Asking for people's stories, visiting with them, you all know how to do all that. Thanking them for all they've done for you. And telling those stories. Lloyd, is this where you want to talk about listening?
Yeah.
Okay. Lloyd has some listening he wants to talk about.
How about you talk about?
You talk about listening. Lloyd's got a good speech.
Cheryl, we cannot hear in the back.
You're not hearing?
No.
They're going right up there. That guy up there is hearing. I do want to talk about listening because that's what we're in for. You know, we tend to, as fundraisers, most of us are extroverts. I'm not. Anybody taking Myers-Briggs? So you know where you stand in this stuff. But I'm an introvert, and I don't talk very loud. But the fact is that what we're here to do is to listen. And you will listen and hear people that will tell you, yes, I'm interested in this portion of what you're doing. Whether it's the YW, whether it's children's home, whatever. And you find out what they're interested in, and you feed that. I mean, it's up to us to feed that. I just, you know, we talk about we don't necessarily have to have the wealthiest donors that we're going to appeal to. And I need to tell a quick story about that. I started going by and visiting a man that used to come. I was in the hospital, the children's hospital, and some of our local neighbors would come and eat. You know, they'd get there early, and we gave them a special price, and you know, then they ate and they put a lot in their pockets. But anyway, so I went to visit this old guy and talked to him about coming. He enjoyed coming to the hospital and meeting some of his old buddies. And he started talking about his World War II experiences and so forth. And I never asked him for anything, but I listened to him. And when he died, and we were talking about houses, you know, houses are not all bad. And he left his house to the hospital. Well, that was, you know, we just turned it over to a realtor, he sold it, and he didn't have any relatives. But those types of things you can say, well, that just came over the transom. No, you keep that relationship building, and you do listen. My wife worked with several hospitals in the St. Petersburg, Tampa area, and what she did was talk to them about, she worked with the clergy portion of it in the hospital, people that visit patients. And she had to get them away from, let's preach to these, let's save these people. No, you're not going to turn these people around to something that they don't believe in. But if you listen, you find out what their strong points are. So I just encourage you to, if you don't do listening skills, it's worth just reading about it and learning about how to listen. So anyway, that's my bit on listening.
So you're going to go and listen. And then making sure that you are giving people the opportunity in every way that you touch them, that's printed, your website, to tell you that they want to learn more, or tell you that they've made a plan and that they want you to know that. It's the checkoff box. I believe I've included you in my will, or I want to know about that. I'm sure someone's tested whether it's better to say I have done it or I want to know more about it, but I don't know the answer. Okay, so I want to talk specifics about beneficiary designations. I have a little bit of a bias. I happen to think beneficiary designations, not bequests, are where the real money is. Beneficiary designations control assets that don't flow through the will. Retirement accounts, primarily, life insurance policies, and some other stuff. Most people who live to an advanced age are not going to have remained in their home, so their real estate asset will have been liquidated or otherwise dispersed. Many of them will have converted their regular invested assets into an annuity controlled by a beneficiary designation, or they're using an IRA as their primary retirement income vehicle controlled by a beneficiary designation. So reminding people that this is also a way to give is something I'm doing more and more of, and being more blunt about. For a couple reasons. A lot of times that's the last piece of paper that the advisor shoved in front of them, and they've done a whole bunch of paperwork to open this annuity or open this IRA, and they put down their spouse and don't put a contingent beneficiary or a secondary beneficiary, and that's where you can be. Same thing happens, one member of the couple dies, the spouse has to go in and redo some paperwork, and they don't know what to put, or they put the kids because they think that's what they're supposed to do, but they provided for the kids in another way. I think it's a piece of the process that often with advisors gets rushed, where we have an opportunity to let people know there's a significant way for you to use that asset when you don't need it anymore. And that's the other key to this. Nothing happens until they don't need it anymore. And if you're the contingent beneficiary, nothing happens until they don't need it anymore, and the person they said who needs it next doesn't need it anymore. There are no people in the line. When I first came to the Community Foundation, I got to go to the Plan Giving Institute with Bob Sharp, the elder, who's dearly departed. And he was very adamant about, you have to understand that people are going to take care of people first. And that's what they should do, and that's what we need them to do. But after people, there's lots of opportunity. Beneficiary designations happen on a form. For most kinds of accounts, it's a form you can download off the company's website and make a change. Some providers, you can make a change online. It costs nothing except maybe a stamp. It requires no lawyer drawing up papers. It's free, it's easy. It doesn't impact any other part of the plan if they're putting you in as a contingent, because it doesn't affect the other people who are in line. You download the form, you sign it, and you send it in. It's done. It's the easiest gift anybody can make, short of like digging the change out of their pockets and handing it to you. Again, your legal name and your EIN, important. Telling people they can make gifts this way, important. And knowing how you'll acknowledge those kinds of commitments, important. Small advertisement, the Charitable IRA rollover is in effect until December 31st of 2013, and then it goes away likely forever. Okay, I've said that before. I said it every year. For the 6 previous years it's been in effect. But this time, I would love to come back and let you all stand up and like jeer at me because it came back and it's permanently enacted and it's never going away again. But I don't think that's going to happen. Because that charitable IRA rollover provision was attached to something called the extenders package. And that extenders package is what they kept sort of rubber stamping and rolling over to take care of the patch on the alternative minimum tax and the estate tax exclusions and a bunch of other stuff that is really compelling to our Congress. Charitable IRA rollover, not compelling. The extenders package all got addressed. What's the abbreviation, Becky? American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2013. I don't know. It got passed on January 1st. Maybe it's called 2012. Yeah. Right. But they didn't pass it till the wee hours of the morning on January 1st. So now the charitable IRA rollover is just this thing adrift. I doubt, despite the best efforts of many good organizations, AFP, AHP, independent sector, council on foundations, I don't think they're going to get it any traction all by itself. So, until December 31st, 2013, donors who are over 70 and a half at the time of their gift can make a direct gift to you of up to $100,000. It doesn't come as income to them. They don't get a charitable deduction. It's just a transfer. It counts against their required minimum distribution, and that's already more details than I said I was going to share. We have an article in our most current newsletter that you're welcome to use as reference. You can read our newsletter on our website under the News tab. You can find it there. It downloads into easily pageable format. Bequests. Y'all know what this is. It's a provision in a will. Does require a lawyer to write it. Really? Donors can give you everything in their estate. They can give you a specific asset. They can give you everything that's left over. They can give you a stated sum. That's pretty unusual because most people realize they don't know what they're going to end up with, and so it's kind of hard to say only this amount. Depending on the donor's situation, some of that bequest may be deductible, maybe not. We don't, frankly, have a lot of people paying estate tax anymore. $5 million exclusion per person. You gotta have a lot. You gotta have a lot going on to be in estate tax territory. Those are the two planned gifts I think Lloyd may argue with me. You really need to understand and talk about with your donors. The other stuff is fancy and it's interesting, and if you, like Becky and I, really like an excuse to read the tax code every few months. Ooh, private letter ruling. We have our own little geek fest that goes on and all. Then it's easy to get distracted. It's like, we have a little saying in our office, like, it's like the big shiny object. Like, ooh, charitable, non-grantor, charitable lead trust. Look what you can do with this.
Marcia, there's still time to get out.
Right. But you know what? There's like 3 people in all of Western North Carolina who really need a non-grantor charitable lead trust. 2 of them have already done it with the Community Foundation. There's only 1 left.
Who?
So me to know. Okay. Okay. Lloyd needs to talk about his 7 easy steps for your bequest. Okay. We're good.
Is that all right?
You've got 27 seconds per step.
Right, that's
Lloyd.
right. I do. Thank you. Thank you, Sheryl. Sheryl shares some great information. And I'm going to go ahead and pass these out. Marcia, would you pass it? Just have it over there. Thank you all for letting us come share some of this. I want to look at 5 myths of planned giving because I think I'm going to go through them very quickly. And there are others, but that your wealthiest donors, your best prospects, that may be true or it may not be true. Because the more you work on putting a process together, a planned giving process, it'll spill over. I had about 300 people on my, what you call a Heritage Foundation, Heritage Society, and very few of those were coming through each year. You don't want to have a society and tell people they have to die. But what the process did, it allowed people in the community to know that we were serious about planned giving. And we were getting 40 to 50 wills and trusts a year. But they didn't come from those people, nor did they come from the wealthiest prospects. Average gift was about $25,000, $30,000 that came through wills and trusts. But the total amounted to $4 or $5 million a year. Well, you could use that. I bet there's not an organization in this room that couldn't use that. So you have to educate your board, educate your staff, so that they understand what you're trying to do. How many of you, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but think about it, have remembered your organization in some way in your estate plan. How many of you have an estate plan? Remember that 50%? That includes, the 50% includes lawyers. Think about that. Scary, huh? And so one of the ways that I've done this, and you can encourage some of your people to do this, staff people or people that can't afford to remember in a big way, take an old life insurance policy. Just take an old policy. It takes 1 page to change a beneficiary. Add 10%, I'm going to leave 10% of this to my organization. You can always change it if you leave, you get fired, you get kicked out, you leave for whatever reason. But that's an easy thing to do, and then you go to somebody and you go to a board member and say, would you like to try to do that? It's really not hard. Think about that. Your financial advisors cannot give your clients or donors advice to give you something in their estate. Well, that may or may not be true. What they can do is say, do you have charitable intent? And charitable intent is what you know. We talked about people that are predisposed to remember not just your organization, but to remember charity in their estate plan. So attorneys can do that, and they say, well, I like kids that are being taken care of, in foster type homes and group homes. Then you know what? If they've got that information and they got a folder that says, boy, I was just reading about children's home and what some great things they do, that happens. And I had a firm tell me one time, well, we can't designate one charity or anything like that. And during the next year, I had 5 wills from them. So it happens. Are there any? Is that right, Alex? Is that true? Huh? And it's because you've built a relationship. We talked about a relationship with donors, but remember the relationship with. You need to keep the names of planned gift donors a secret. Well, no, not unless they request that. And if you can talk to them and say, you remember us in your will, that's wonderful. Would you mind if we publicize that, or maybe even give a testament to that in your publication? And have a little publication. Have something that keeps it in front of them all the time. It's not like a capital campaign where you're going to run through it and you're going to finish. You're not going to finish. You hope to keep these people for a long time. And timing. Let me just say one little quick thing about time. I promise I'm going to be through in 2 minutes. But you say, well, it takes so long to build a bequest program, and we don't get anything from it for many, many years. I got to tell you that I had a frequent donor who, her trust officer called me up and said, it was on a Friday, and called me up and said, Lloyd, I'd like to put you all in a name as a beneficiary of my pooled income fund. I do not recommend pooled income. But anyway, so I went to see her, and she was very concerned about the 5-year carryover. She was 94 years old. And she's worried about the 5-year carryover. So we talked, and the trust officer was in there. She died on Monday. I did not kill her. But it was done. He had taken it right back and had completed it enough that we received it was like $100,000. So, that's timing. I've got to cut it off. We got to leave here. And if there are questions, you can come up afterwards and see Sheryl and myself. We've got some interesting stories, and thank you all very much for listening.
On their cover sheet, there are many people who can help you with plan giving, resources who are not listed here, and so we want to make sure, since we're ethical fundraisers, right, that
I didn't see
yeah,
that, so I don't know what you're talking about.
So anyway, there are lots of resources. Any questions for you all? We have about 5 minutes for questions.
There was a question over here.
Yeah, Lynn.
Yeah, what's your best advice
emphasize on the recognition
I
side of it.
really
Recognize.
wanted to talk about that, and I didn't get you.
Call.
So thank you very much. I have 2 minutes. So I think recognition is very important. But you can recognize people at the same time that you're recognizing other people, and they feel a part of the whole. We had a society banquet and recognized donors of $1,000 or more and so forth. But we also included our dream builders. These were the people that remember. And we give a little vase, vase, if the cost was up there. But you had on their dream builder. And I would go into homes to visit, and I'd see that vase, vase, sitting on the mantle or somewhere. So, yeah, I think recognition is important in publications or whatever, but you obviously want to make sure people agree with that. If they want to give it anonymously, they can do that.
And how different would you recognize gifts that you have received already through a planned gift versus the people that say they've made a planned gift?
Then you need to obviously talk to the family to some degree, but also to know what I think you can do that on the basis of what are the needs and the understanding with the family. I think that's what you're talking about.
Nor are they equal. I mean, you see all the stories.
It's expectancy as well as.
The gift's not in hand is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, you don't have the gift yet.
Oh, you don't
How
have
much
the gift
credence
yet.
do you?
Right.
No, here's one you don't have the gift yet. Here's one you do have the gift. How do you weigh the thanks and the recognition publicly for those?
Well, you're still working with the one that hadn't made the gift.
That can
Yeah,
change.
huh?
That can actually change before, if they've said that they put a gift in their plan.
You don't know that
You don't
until
know
you
if
get
they
some
actually
kind
put
of.
it together, depending on what happens to the organization.
Oh, I know that. I just
Well,
thought
you-
maybe somebody would have some good point of record.
Jay has a point.
No,
Imagine
mine
that
was
not.
totally different.
Oh, go for it.
Okay. As y'all know, I've been with several organizations over my career. Some of those organizations have beautiful buildings with ivy on the walls. And some of those organizations are more like the little Lebowski urban achievers that may or may not be, may not give donors a sense of permanence. Let me put it that way. So if I'm with that kind of organization, how can I present a compelling case for a perpetual gift if my organization, there's questions about whether my organization is perpetual?
I think you can't. I mean, I think, and I think there are some organizations that shouldn't go on forever. There are some organizations that need a different kind of work now to ensure that they can, or might, that then allows you to have that conversation. I think you can also talk to donors about, I know you're passionate about us, we want to be here, you know how hard we're working. I hope you'll include us in your plan, and I hope you'll include our cause. If we're not here, what's the cause? What's the theme sentence? Is it kids? Is it the environment? What is it? Because none of us are guaranteed to be around.
So where could they set up such a fund, Sheryl Aikman?
The Community Foundation might be able to help.
And you can I'd be glad to talk to you about that.
I have one last thing, because I want to you'll see this, don't believe it. Your donors have to be old. No, most people make their wills. If they make a will, they make it in their 40s. We can't do anything that will decrease annual giving. No evidence that that's what happens when you talk to people about legacies. We never receive any gifts like this. It's because you didn't start 20 years ago. I've been at the Community Foundation 15 years. We're 35 years old. It's just starting to pick up a little bit. The people who believed in the Community Foundation at the very, very, very beginning are dying. And lastly, I need, this is the, like, please let me just put anything in front of really doing this work. I need new software, I need a fancier office, I need a different CEO. I need a better chair. Okay, I love this fact. You're gonna tuck this in your brain and you're gonna use it. There are charitable bequests in English wills dating to 1284. There is English statutory law about charitable bequests and protecting charitable intent that dates to 1414. These people did not have an Aeron chair or fancy software. They had a feather and some berry juice. It did not stand in their way. I have removed all your obstacles. Go forth.